So welcome Gonzalo Alberto from the CIRA Project and Cecile Kazax-Jean from the Canadian HIV/AIDS Legal Network. So Gonzalo, you and I first met a few years ago when HIV Justice Worldwide helped support the creation of the Mexican Network Against HIV Criminalization. Before I come to you, let's look at a short film documenting how it all started.
In October 2017, the first Spanish-language HIV is Not a Crime meeting took place in Mexico City.
Yo creo que esta reunión es inédita en México porque por primera vez organizaciones de la sociedad civil nos sentamos a pensar, a discutir y a conocer el impacto de la criminalización en nuestro país.
Participants learned about HIV criminalization around the world, the global movement to end HIV criminalization, and the importance of the leadership of people living with HIV networks.
Prior to me coming here, I didn't really understand criminalization and how it really implicates on the lives of persons living with HIV. And I think that's an issue that we need to work worldwide and especially in our region of Latin America and the Caribbean.
After analysing the legal situation across Mexico, strategizing to come up with solutions, and passionate discussions, by the meeting's end, participants rolled up their sleeves and created the 11-point Mexican Declaration Against HIV Criminalization.
Bueno, yo lo mínimo que esperaría que saliera de este foro es que pudiésemos crear una red mexicana en contra de la criminalización, que trabajáramos de manera coordinada en todo el país.
And they wasted no time getting their message out. Incredibly, 2 weeks later, at a meeting with key Quintana Roo lawmakers, network representatives presented the declaration to Congresswoman Laura Beristain, who last year pushed for a new, unjust, overly broad HIV criminal law. The result? A firm commitment to repeal Quintana Roo's problematic HIV law. Congratulations to the new Mexican network, an inspiration to everyone fighting HIV-related injustice.
So Gonzalo, that's amazing. That was 3 years ago, and since then I know that the Mexican network's gone on to do some more incredible work. What's happened since?
Thank you for having me here, and it's really something very special for me having this conversation with all of my colleagues and all of the people that we work in the HIV Justice Network, and especially in CIRA Project. And I just want to tell you that after that, we have our second national meeting last year, with the representation of 13 states from Mexico and 45 organizations. And the most important things has been the lobby work that the Mexican network has done regarding the intention of criminalizing HIV people in Mexico City, and also sexual workers. That the first one, the HIV intention of criminalizing people with HIV in Mexico City was was held and was put out from the congressional conversations in Mexico City Congress. And the other one about sexual workers are still pending because the situation that we are facing with the COVID. Also, the most other important issue is that The network has been working in the criminalization of COVID-19, and that's something very important because just this past June 30, in the Mexican state of Nuevo León, which is in the north part of the country, has approved legislation that criminalize people who transfer an illness. Is for COVID, but doesn't mention COVID or HIV. And with our experience, we are looking that mostly all these legislations are intended to criminalize and not just COVID, but HIV as well. And also, the point is that the penalty is 10 years in prison. And this legislation is already on. And the Mexican network with the Commission of Human Rights in Mexico, they are working to present the appeal at the Supreme Court. And also the other important thing that the Mexican network has done is work with the lack of drugs that was a result from the new policy of the Mexican government. And especially during last year was a very, very bad lack of drugs for people who is living with HIV. And basically, those are the main issues. And we are continuing to working in the situation of the penal codes in the Mexican Republic, because every state had different penal codes, and they use that legislation to criminalize people with who live with HIV, and basically that's one of the main issues that we are working on.
Thanks so much, Gonzalo. I mean, what's clear is that the work that was started focusing on HIV criminalization is now much broader, that the network is established, and obviously anything that impacts key populations and people living with HIV is something that the Mexican network is working on. If you hang on a sec, I'm going to talk to Cecile, and then I'll come back to you in a moment. So Cecile, welcome. So you work, of course, for the Canadian HIV/AIDS Legal Network, but you've also been HIV Justice Worldwide's Francophone Africa Regional Coordinator since we began in 2016. Can you share with us some of the examples of how the Francophone Network has galvanized around HIV criminalization?
Yeah, thank you very much, Edwin, and hi to everyone. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm very happy to tell you about the Francophone Network. Basically, it exists since 2017, and it is composed of human rights and HIV advocates from around like 14 different countries, mainly in Francophone Africa. And the purpose of this network is really to make sure that there is a space for those Francophone activists to actually learn, exchange experience and resources on HIV criminalization, but also to build bridges with other colleagues and activists around the world, you know, in a way to overcome the language barriers. And this is really what HIV Justice Worldwide is about. And I think this is really important to ensure that HIV criminalization remains on the radar of HIV activists in the region, especially in Francophone Africa, where we heard from Michaela that many HIV laws that are meant to protect people living with HIV actually have provision criminalizing people living with HIV. And where even if we haven't seen many prosecution, or maybe we just don't know about them, this is a real threat. So it's really important that those HIV advocates, you know, are part of the global conversation and that we can support them.
Absolutely. So I know there's been a number of successes. We don't have a lot of time to talk about them, but the main thing that I think people need to understand is that we now have this incredible Francophone Africa advocacy fact sheet that you co-authored with Alain Khar. And it's the first of many that we're hoping to publish that are focused on a particular region and language. Can you tell us a little bit about it, Cecile?
Yeah, so this info sheet is really to make sure that there is resources that are made by Francophone for Francophone on HIV criminalization, and that really touch on the arguments that are useful for people working in the region of Francophone Africa. And it also includes some examples of how local advocates have done advocacy on HIV criminalization in the region. And just wanted to add on that point that we do support local advocacy through HIV Justice Worldwide, and including recently in Burkina Faso and DRC. And so you'll let me know if there is enough time to talk about this, but just to reinforce that we do provide support to local advocates.
Absolutely, Cecile. Unfortunately, there isn't enough time to talk about it now, but maybe that's one of the things that we can that people can ask you about during the Q&A. Before we go, Gonzalo, I know that you have a message you'd like to give to your fellow advocates in Latin America, Caribbean, many of whom I know are on the webinar right now. In 30 seconds, what would you like to say?
Please join us for this movement. It's very important. We know that in Latin America there is cases, but we don't have them. And please contact me and contact Zero or contact any other colleague in HIV Justice Network worldwide. We will answer you, but it's very, very critical for us to have the information that what is happening in the Caribbean and in the rest of the region in Latin America. Please send us your email of your organization, or even if you are not in one, join us in this struggle. It's very, very, very crucial and important. And we are facing this together, and we will have to work together. Thank you, Edwin.
Thanks, Gonzalo, and thanks, Cecile. So obviously we'd hoped to be together all in Mexico City, and we would have had a special focus in Spanish for Latin American Caribbean people. But anyway, for now, I really want to thank you, Gonzalo and Cecile. If you have any questions for them or for any previous guests, you can ask them in the Zoom Q&A, or if you're watching live on Facebook, you can comment under the live stream. But for now, Gonzalo and Cecile, you get a round of applause. Thank you so much. So now it's time to expand our virtual sofa as I welcome 3 guests. All of them are Global Advisory Panel members for the HIV Justice Network, and of course, not only that, but leaders in their respective communities.